some more people joining. Welcome, everyone. We've got another minute or so. Hello. One thing that we do like to do with each session that we host, we usually get quite a big number of people joining, so we don't have time to go around to introduce everyone individually. But if you're interested in just typing into the chat box, where you're coming from, where you're joining us from, we like to see how far and wide people are joining from. So feel free to do that. And we'll just get started with some introductions. Just gonna mute. I think we've got about just over 100 people registered, so it would be nice if we can get even half of that. I know everybody has a busy schedule. We're hoping to bring some teachings in for the evenings and weekends. So as soon as we have availability for that, we'll start planning. All right, so let's get going. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are live recording from Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg, just outside Winnipeg and Headingley. We have Kathy Pompana joining us. She's one of our knowledge keepers and resolution health support workers with Anish Corporation. She's here to share Star Blanket life teachings with everyone. So I won't do an introduction. I'll let her do that herself, but I just wanted to share that this is part of a series called Reclaiming Cultural Connections, Reigniting Blood Memory. Anish Corporation is very excited to offer these sessions, especially considering the state of everything today. Everything seems to be on lockdown, so we figured this was a good way to still connect with friends, family, and community, and bring everybody together in a good way. So right, today we're going to be hearing Star Blanket teachings, and Kathy is ready to go. So I will pass it along to you, and you can go ahead and do your introduction. So thank you,
Amanda. I hope everyone can hear me loud and clear. Amanda, I just wanted to let you know that I can't hear you. So if you need to tell me something, you're going to have to shout. For some reason, my speakers are not working on my laptop, but I hope you all can hear me loud and clear. So mitaki api, chahedeshka dita wakiwi amaki api. I'm from the Sioux Valley Dakota Nation. I live just outside of Winnipeg, and my name is Catherine Pompana. And I am, one of my titles, I guess you would call them here at Anish Corporation, is Knowledge Keeper. And a lot of our corporations have elders, have spiritual advisors. I don't associate myself with being of those yet. I feel like I'm not worthy of those, I guess, titles you would call them yet. But so what we decided to come up with was Knowledge Keeper, and that's just that despite of our age, we've learned a lot, and we have a lot that we can share. We have some knowledge keepers here at Anish that are way younger than I am. So this is I don't think it's going to take the full 2 hours, because it's just a very simple teaching. It was actually a story. It started out as a story that my grandmother told me. She was a star blanket maker, and she was also my babysitter when I was little. And when she would be making star blankets, I would help her to quilt them. She didn't quilt them with a machine. She quilted them with yarn. So at every one of these little corners here, she would have a little piece of yarn. So my job was to tie the yarn. I would tie that little piece of yarn and then cut it. And so while she was making star blankets, she would tell stories. And I don't know why this one stuck with me. Some of the other ones did. Some of the other ones stuck with me, but this one, I don't know. I think because I had questions, I wanted to know more. But so we'll get into that. But first, I just wanted to let you all know too that we're not going to be learning how to make a star blanket in this in this workshop. Sometimes I get people sign up for this workshop and they think they're going to make a star blanket. So we're not doing that today. This is just I'm just sharing a story with you. So yeah, like I said, my grandmother was a star blanket maker and she was always sewing. And not just star blankets, but any kind of patchwork blankets, anything. She was always sewing. And I don't know where these blankets went. I know some of our family got some of them, but I think people were ordering them. I think that's what it was because, when she was making these blankets, I was only about 6 or 7 years old. And so I don't know what happened to them after. I know she made them and then they were gone. So I think she was making them for people. She used to, when I first started off helping her, she used to have one of those old sewing machines with the foot pedal. And so I started off, my job was to sit under there and push that foot pedal with my hands back and forth. That was my job. And then when she got a new sewing machine, I got promoted. So I went from foot pedal pusher to yarn tire. I guess that was a promotion. But I really enjoyed my time, sitting with her and talking, listening to her stories that she would tell. She didn't speak great English. She did speak English, but it was pretty broken because she spoke her language. She spoke the Lakota language, and so fluently, and so her English wasn't great, but we managed to communicate very well. And I miss, those days of sitting with her and I'm glad that I listened when she told her stories. I'm glad I listened because it wasn't long after that. I was only 8 years old when she passed. And she took all of those stories with her. But I do remember a couple, and I'm still trying to piece some of those together so that I can share those as well. But she did pass on to me how to make a star blanket. And so I started making star blankets, and I don't make them the way they do today, where they sew strips and then cut them on an angle. I don't do it that way. I can't wrap my head around how to do it that way. Apparently it's an easier way, but I just can't do it. It doesn't work for me. So how I do it is how she showed me how to do it, which was to cut all the diamond shapes, all the different colors of diamonds, and have stacks and stacks of diamonds, and then sew those together one by one. So that's how I make a star blanket still today. The last time I made a star blanket, I think it was about 7 years ago. I made a star blanket I did a hunka ceremony at the Sundance, and I adopted one of my good friends as my sister. So that was the last time I made a star blanket, was for that purpose. But before we go any further, I just want to, I have a small PowerPoint that I want to put up. And it just sort of talks about how the star blanket came to be before we get into this specific teaching. So I'll put that up. Do I have control of this? Okay. Okay, give me a second here. Let me make sure that this is up. Sorry, I'm on my laptop and I'm used to having a mouse, and I don't have my mouse with me here. Okay. All right. Can everybody see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is about stages of life. Um, Now, before we had access to um, different colors of fabrics and cotton and that, star blankets were originally basically painted buffalo robes. The star pattern represented many things depending on who and what the robe was meant for. Buffalo robes were made and given to mark momentous occasions, such as a birth, a marriage, a death, a truce between tribes, a victory in battle, that sort of thing. Um, the circle of diamond shapes represented different things. For example, if the robe was given um, to a family to honor the birth of a baby, then the circle of diamonds would have represented family, community, love, protection, with a symbol representing the baby in the center. And so you can kind of see how that would work when you look at this picture. So that very center, that would be the baby, and then around it is their immediate protection and family, their home, their teepee that they're going to live in, and then all around that is their family, and then extended family and community. Um, if the robe were given to honor a person who had passed away, then the circle of diamonds may have represented, for example, all the eagle feathers that that person um, earned in their battles throughout their life. And so the purpose and meaning of each robe was unique and personal to those who made them and who gave them, and you know who they were giving them to. When European settlers began arriving, they brought different fabrics such as cotton and wool with them, but the buffalo were still abundant and the Plains tribes still used them for their clothing, food, shelter, and tools. In 1862, Abraham Lincoln signed the Pacific Railway Act, which ultimately led to the Indian Wars and the mass hunting and deliberate extinction of the buffalo herds to deprive the Plains tribes of their means of food and shelter. And so this picture up on the top right corner there that's the railway coming through. Abraham Lincoln wanted to expand the country west, and so pushed, of course, Indigenous people were in the way. So wanting to get rid of the Indigenous people, he called for the soldiers to go, and knowing that we followed the buffalo, we used the buffalo for our food, our shelter, our clothing, our tools, we used them for everything. We depended on them for that. They knew that, and so they sent the soldiers out to kill as many buffalo as they could. And so this picture at the bottom is a picture of buffalo skulls, buffalo bones. And there's a soldier up there on top, standing on top of this massive mound of buffalo skulls. And so because of this, our access to the buffalo herds dramatically decreased. And then so we had to become dependent on, you know, trading with the settlers that came along, trading with the trappers that came along, and trading what we had, our pelts and things that we could trade with them, or showing them how to plant certain things, showing them where to find food, those sorts of things we also traded in trading with them for fabrics that we could then use for our clothing and our blankets, because we no longer had access to the buffalo. So as you can see though, this top left-hand corner, that's a buffalo robe, it's painted. And then at the right underneath it is a blanket. And you can see the similarity. Somebody way back when was brilliant and came up with a way of sewing these diamond shapes together so that they would match what we used to do on the buffalo robes. So they're very similar, and they mean the same things. Or they did. Today, not so much, but back then, when we didn't have access to a robe that we could paint and give to somebody, we used the fabrics, dyed the fabrics with different plants and insects to use as dyes. And then we created these blankets, and then that's what we gave. We did what we had to do. So I'm going to just close this for a minute. And then we'll start talking about how do I get me back up? I'm lost. Where am I? Oh, stop share. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I'm no good at this. So this particular blanket story has to do with, like I said, family, community, and the love and support and the connections that are there. She did have another couple of interesting stories that she told with star blankets that I want to really think about and remember how she told them to me, because I want to share those as well. Because I have never heard them. I've never heard these stories after she passed. I never heard these stories again. And I don't know if they were passed on to her. I mean, they must have been, but I'm still not sure. I don't know if they were passed on to her or if she made them up as she was going. I don't know, but they were really good stories and they stuck with me. One of the ones that she talked about, she made this blanket, and I rarely see them, but they're very pretty. There's a star blanket that it's like in the shape of a spiral, where the colors start in the center and they kind of go around like this, and then the different colors all kind of follow in line. It's really pretty blanket. She made one like that. And the story that she told me when I was 6 years old was that this was a race. Can you see that? That looks really, you can see it? Yeah. Okay, so it was kind of, that's not even any dirt. So it kind of goes like this. And then the shapes are here, right? Like this. And so this is the blanket. And then they just keep going round and round, and then they go like this. And then those colors all followed each other around and around like that. And what she said that was a race that the animal nations were having a race. And so once they got, and this is the part that I have to figure out. I think I need to make one to figure this out. So how she said was, the colors start and they follow each other like that. So the fastest animal, I don't remember which one was ahead, and the rest of them all followed. But then as they got to these parts here, where they sort of, there's a space, that's when they would get like this, and then they would stop, couldn't go any further. And then that next color would come in. And then that color would go so far, and then it wouldn't be able to go any farther. And then the next color would come in like that. So these were the animals not being able to go any farther. And then so at the very end, that last animal was the winner of this race. And I really have to sit down and figure that one out. But I thought that was a pretty cool story. And then there was another one that I remember that she told me. There's another style of blanket that she made, and it was exactly the same as this, except for at the diamond parts, at each diamond, I'm not a very good drawer. So at each diamond part at the top, these ones here, it would be the same color all the way down to the center, like that. And then the center would be a different color. The center that she was making on that day was green. It was a green center. And so all the diamond shapes that came down like this were all the same color, except for this top one. This top one was half black and half white. The very tip was black and this bottom part was white. And she explained to me, and I didn't really understand at the time, but I still was one of the ones that I kind of, it kind of stuck with me. She explained to me that the black part of this diamond was people living in their teepees. These are people, these are all different nations of people. And they're living in their teepees, their communities. And the reason why it's black is because they got lost. They got lost to addiction, alcohol, things like that. And so it was dark. It was very dark. But then one day they could hear this drumming, and it was coming from the center of all these nations. And so they came out and they looked out and they were wondering where this drumming was coming from. And they really liked that sound. It was different from what they were sort of used to because they were keeping themselves in this darkness. And they saw that when they peeked out and they heard that drum, it called them. It called. They wanted to go and see what it was. So they followed this path, and this path led them to the Sundance. And then so this middle part here was Sundance, and I didn't understand what that meant. I knew it was a ceremony, but I didn't really understand being a little girl. But you know, now that I'm older and I've heard many more stories and lots of teachings, I understand now. The one about the race was when the animals were of the Black Hills, there was a big race that happened. So I heard that a lot later on in life. And as soon as I heard that story, I thought, oh my goodness, that's the story she told me. That's what she was talking about, that story about the animals were racing. And then this, talking about this Sundance, and these are all different colored nations. These are not just indigenous nations. This is all over the world, is how she said it. This is the world. And these are different parts of the world, and these people are coming from their homes. And then I heard, not that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, about 10 years ago, I heard somebody talking about at a Sundance, they were talking about one day, all the nations, all the colors, all the people of the world will dance under one tree of life. And that's how we're going to heal the world, is if we all come together and start participating with each other and acknowledging each other's customs and ways of life, not necessarily all coming to the Sundance, but all going to their own, back to their own ceremonial ways of life. And then, we go and we see and we acknowledge that way instead of saying, no, that's not right. That's not how you do it. We got to stop doing that. If that's how they do it, that's how they do it, right? So that's what she was talking about, was this prophecy, I guess, that somebody said, they had this dream one day, all the nations of the world are going to come and everyone's going to dance under the tree of life, and that's what's going to heal the world. So I really, when I hear these stories later on, and it triggers these stories that she told me as a little girl, and I get so emotional because I thought, oh, she was giving me teachings. She was teaching me about life. Of course, as a little girl, I didn't know that. I just, thought they were nice stories. But I carried them, and I'll figure out those other ones so that I can share them as well. So this one here, now being 7 years old, I only remembered really bits and pieces of it. So when I got older, I had to sit down and piece it together. No pun intended, because you piece together a blanket. But I had to sit down and piece it together and figure out what she meant by that. What did she mean by that? And so I think I figured it out. So the stages of life, and I remember her telling me there's 9. There's 9 stages. And so this middle part here, and these very tips here, those all represent creator. That's eon. That's energy. That's where, well, being from the Dakota Nation, Dakota Lakota nations, this is where our creation story is that we began from eon. And eon was energy. And so these here represent eon. And then so this first stage, this first ring around, that's a baby. And so how she said was, she put her needle down, tucked it into the blanket like that, and she put her hands together like this. Oh, my arthritis, like this. It hurts to do this. She did this. She showed me this. And she said, this is where we come from. And so this was creator, coming from creator's hands. So that's what this represents, basically, is creator's hands. And so from out of creator's hands comes us as children, babies. And then so the next ring around this is toddler. And I don't know what years these would be, from baby to toddler, and up like that. I don't know what years those, because every child is different. So it depends, I guess. You get to know your children and know when if they're growing up a little quicker than others, or a little bit behind others. But this ring around here represents toddler. Okay, and then this one here, this black one, is a child, a little bit older child. This white ring that goes around, that's a teenager. Okay, and then this green one here, this is the last one that goes all the way around before it starts to cut, before this cut off here. So this is the last one that goes all the way around like this. And this is a young adult. Okay, and there's a reason why. She said there's a reason why that's the last one that goes around. Because the next one, this white one here, that's an adult. And that, this adult represents responsibility. This line here, this other second black line, that's a parent. This red line here is a grandparent. This yellow here is an elder. So those are the stages: baby, toddler, child, teenager, young adult, adult, parent, grandparent, elder, and then back to creator. So if you see, I hope this is clear. These get smaller and smaller as they go out to the end. Because once we get here, obviously, we're getting older and our lives are getting shorter now. We're getting closer to going home. So these get smaller and smaller as we go back to creator. But these also have a connection. This is the last ring that goes all the way around that young adult. And so this is where you've gone through all the stages of being a child. You're no longer a little kid. You're not quite an adult, but you're not a little kid anymore. And this is where, a lot of times And we don't live like this anymore, unfortunately. But when we lived in communities, we lived in, out on the plain and in our teepees and our communities, this is where that young adult would go and just go and experience life. And it wouldn't be just by themselves. There would be a few of them, and they would take off. And they would go and travel around and, ride around and see what's out there. So this is like letting go of the apron strings. You're no longer hanging onto those apron strings. You're going and you're figuring out who you are by all of these good teachings that you had from these adults. And you're going and you're figuring out who you are and what you want to do with your life. Because the next thing is that responsibility, that adult. That next thing, you're going to have to be a responsible adult. And so how these are connected, and it's very important, this part, how they're connected. So I'm going to take this off and show. If you take this and you fold it down like this, back to the center. I should have painted this side, but if you see how it folds on that last one that goes all the way around, they match. They match going back to the center. So they're exact opposite from the center and then back out. And the reason for this is because there's no one closer to Creator than these babies and these elders. They have a connection that we don't know. One of my friends a long time ago said to me, she was telling me about this connection because I was sharing this with her, and she said, you ever see an old person, they don't really do anything, they don't really talk to anybody anymore, maybe they're grouchy, they're really tired, they're getting tired now, they're kind of wanting to go home. The one that comes to mind is what's her name? This old lady in a wheelchair. It's in a cartoon. Mexican little boy. Forget the name of that movie. Coco. Mama Coco. That's what I think of when I think of what she was talking about. If you were to take a newborn baby and hand that baby to that elder, all of a sudden it's like she will wake up and start smiling and cooing and playing with that baby and rocking that baby. It's almost like they have this connection because that baby has just come from Creator, and that old person is about to go back to Creator. So there's an energy there. There's a connection. It's beautiful, beautiful connection. So the next one, the child, this red ring here matches, where am I? Oh, the red ring here matches the parent, the grandparent. So this child, not quite a baby, walking, I guess, toddler, sorry, not quite a child yet, not a baby, but walking and sort of babbling and able to run around. Once somebody's kids are grown and they've moved out, and you kind of don't see them again, for a while, they're doing their own thing, they're starting to have their own family. This can get lonely. It can get very lonely for some people, for those grandparents. But when they see those grandkids, it's just like it breathes new life to hands that have gone still. And that's what one grandmother told me. My hands are always still now. I don't have to mend clothes anymore. I don't have to cook for them anymore. I don't have to do all these things for my kids anymore because they've moved out. and my hands have become still, and that's really sad for me. I try to keep busy, but still, it's really sad. I don't see them too much anymore. But when they bring their grandkids over, she said when they bring their grandkids to visit me, it makes me so happy. I just have tears of happiness because those grandkids, they just bring me life. And then all of a sudden I can get up and I can go run around in the yard with them, and play with them. So there's a connection there as well. The next one, this black one here, now that's a child, so a little bit older. I would say school age, not quite a teenager, but still, they're at that. This is a very important stage in childhood because they're not as carefree as they used to be as toddlers and as babies, obviously. And they're not quite teenagers yet. So this is where the parents have a responsibility to those kids. Really, it's really important to that age of child, because this is when you might notice that they're not so much interested in their toys. They still play with them, but they're not so much interested in them anymore. They're starting to look more at what their older siblings or their older cousins are doing. They're maybe watching cartoons that are a little bit older. It's making that transition from childhood is where this is at. And so this is a very important time where the parents, especially now, we need to pay attention to those kids. And, a lot of times we think, they're fine, they're doing their own thing. And so we sit there like this, and they're doing something over here. We're not even looking. We're sitting like this on our phones or on our computers. But this is the time when they really need us to pay attention to them. Because here is where they're going to learn how to be that teenager that you don't worry about. So this determines when they become that teenager, when they go out with their friends, are they going to say, it doesn't matter, nobody cares about me back home anyway? Are they going to say, it doesn't matter, they won't even miss me anyway, I'll just go home whenever? Or are they going to say, I can't be too late because my mom will worry? That's where this stage right here is, that this is going to determine what kind of teenager they're going to be. And so if you're not sharing with them and listening to them and being honest with them and listening to their feelings and their fears and teaching them, a good way forward, then this teenager is going to be rebellious. I know that firsthand. I was one of those teenagers, Shelley? My oldest cousin is watching, Shelley. She remembers me as a teenager. Because my mom wasn't present. She was not present at this time. And there's reason for that. Some things happened in her life and she went into a depression, and I could be sitting on the couch beside her, crying my little eyes out because, I don't know, some little boy didn't look at me, or, I did my hair really nice that day and yet he didn't look at me, and I'm crying and I'm upset. And, those might seem like trivial things to adults, but to a little girl, a young girl, that's hurtful when the little boys don't pay attention, or somebody said something about my clothes or said my hair was ugly. Those things really hurt, a little girl of that age. So when I was sitting on the couch, beside her, telling her these things, she was watching TV. She just zoned out because she didn't know how to deal with me. She didn't know how to respond to that. And so she wasn't there. She was there at home, but she wasn't present for me at this stage. And so when I became a teenager, I just did whatever I wanted. From about 12 until well, yeah, from about 12 until she passed away. She passed away when I was 16. And I did whatever I wanted. I went where I wanted. I went with who I wanted. I went all over the place. Didn't tell her where I was going. Didn't care because I felt that she didn't care. So why should I bother? Why should I bother phoning home? Because she didn't care. She didn't care anyway. Doesn't matter. Let's just go. And that's how I felt because this important stage was missed with us. So that was my teenage life. I was one of those kids that said, let's just go, whatever. Who cares about her? She's sitting there drinking. She's okay. She'll be all right. And I would leave and not tell her and not come back for days. And that would have been the difference between my behaving that way, or if she had been there for me and been present and, acknowledged my feelings and acknowledged my fears and included me in her life. Like, she was depressed and avoidance meant everything to her at that point. But if she had included me and acknowledged me, then I might have said, okay, hey, let's go do this tonight. And I'd be like, hey, but I can't stay home. I can't stay out too late because my mom will worry. But that didn't happen because that important stage. And so I really emphasize that. My kids, my two older boys, how old are they now? Dakota's going to be 23 and Tyrone is 21. He'll be 22. And I learned from shortly after she passed away, because I don't know who my father is. So shortly after she passed away, I had to grow up. Man, was that was a kick in the butt. I really had to grow up because there was nobody there. I mean, my aunties and cousins and all of that, but my mom was gone. And I was alone and I had to figure it out. And so I had to really grow up. And so I did. I think I still made mistakes. I was young. I married somebody that I shouldn't have, and my cousin Shelley told me I shouldn't have, but I did anyway. Still being that rebellious teenager, right? Still having that part of me. I had 2 kids, and you know what? I don't regret that. Everything that I did in my young life, sure, it might have been dumb, but I don't regret that because I have 2 beautiful boys, 23 and 21, my oldest kids, from that marriage. But I really learned, this sort of pops into my head every once in a while. When something's happening, it kind of pops up and it reminds me to be present and to be there no matter what's going on. My husband now, I have a second family. I have 3 young kids with him. And he used to, when our first son was born, my 3rd son, but his first son, he was new to parenting and didn't really, understand all that. But him too, our baby was, just starting to walk and kind of babbling around, and he loved to drum. as a little baby, barely sitting up, just drumming away. And my husband would be sitting like this, on his phone, doing something, playing casino or something. And I'd say, Ernie, look, he might be even listening right now. He might be watching. And I would say, Ernie, look what he's doing. Look at him. Look at him. Look what he's doing. And then I would get mad at him because by the time he looked, he was finished doing whatever he was doing, whatever the baby was doing. I'm like, you missed it. I told you to look. And I had to tell him one time, you're missing things. And those are things that you're not going to see again. He's going to do things that you're going to miss because you're looking at your phone, and he's not going to do them again, or he might not do them again, and you're going to miss that. And then one day he's going to be an adult, and you're going to say, where did the time go? What happened? Where did it go? Where was I? Because I don't remember. Oh, remember, one time you did this, and then, you fell down, and you laughed and laughed. And then he would be like, where was I? I don't remember that, And I had to remind him that we can't miss out on these times, because one day we're going to be here. And then we go home, and then we're going to share with all our relatives back in the spirit world all those things that we remember from our time here. So this is a very important time. This right here, this black child, very important. Just before they go into that teenager stage. And when do you know? Well, I think I explained, that's when you kind of see that they still play with their toys, but they're not really too interested in them anymore. They're starting to pay more attention to the older kids or what they're doing, and older kid kind of cartoons and things on TV. They're paying more attention to that, and maybe the way they want to dress is a little bit different. That's when they're in that stage. And so we really need to put our phones down and start paying attention to them. So then they're teenagers, this white ring here. And that, like I said, that's what they get out of being that child. What they get from us is what's going to carry them into being a teenager, and if they're going to be a responsible teenager or a rebellious teenager. And so if they're a rebellious teenager and they're like just awful like I was, that's, if my kids did that, that's on me. That's because I wasn't, not just myself, but parents, the mother, father, anyone who's around, aunties, uncles, grandparents, whoever the family unit is. This is where we pay attention to these kids. Because at some point they're going to leave home. That's that green circle around. They're going to leave home. And depending on how these two stages went, we're going to worry. We're going to really worry. And I can't express enough how bad I feel now, because I understand that even though my mom wasn't really present, she must have worried. Man, she must have worried. Not coming home for days and days. Sneaking out in the middle of the night, coming home drunk. She must have just sat there and just worried. And now, I understand that now. And so that's something that I had to sort of make peace with. And go to ceremony for and make that peace with her. Because one day they're going to move out, and you're going to worry about where they are, what they're doing, who they're with. When are they going to be, when are they going to go home? But this is none of our business anymore, really. We had to do what we had to do here, all the responsibilities we had, now they're on their own. And if you did what you're supposed to do as a parent, then you don't have to worry too much. You still will, of course, but you'd be like, you know what? That's a good kid. They had good teachings. I feel good about this. But if it's when you're like, oh, I don't know, did I stress that enough? Did I stress how important that is to, call if you need a ride? If you're drunk, don't drive. Like all of these things. Did I teach them well enough? I don't know. Kind of wasn't really present. That's when you're going to really worry as a parent about those kids. But so now we go into the other side. So sometimes I wish we still lived the way we lived on the plains and the teepees and communities. How nice that would be. But if you want to get a good sort of understanding about what that kind of life was like, I suggest reading. Oh, I dropped a paper. Sorry, dropped it. I suggest reading. There's a book by Luther Standing Bear. It's called Land of the Spotted Eagle. And the reason why I suggest reading this is to get a good understanding of how life really was when we lived in those communities, in those teepees, and we followed the buffaloes, and the older males, the youth went out hunting and on war parties and that sort of thing. Because the first 5 or 6 chapters of this book, really, he tells a really good story, and it's his story. He was born in 1868, and he died in 1939 at the age of 70. So he was there. He remembers living in these teepees and moving with the buffaloes, but the way he words things is it's so poetic, right? And he doesn't just talk about the buffalo running across the field. The way he explains how it looks, how it looked to him as he was looking down on these buffalo, it's just amazing. And how he learned to write in English was that he went to Carlisle Industrial School in Pennsylvania. He went there in 1879. So that's where he learned English, and he wanted to tell this story about how his life used to be. So I recommend. It's a good book. Somebody just asked what the name of it was. It's Land of the Spotted Eagle. That's backwards, isn't it? It's Land of the Spotted Eagle by Luther Standing Bear. Very good. Because the first, like I said, 5 or 6 chapters really talks about this. It talks about this and how it takes a community to raise a child. We always hear that, but what does that mean? What does that really mean? It means this. Simply, this is a very simple teaching, but can be very difficult to put into practice. So when we have had good teachings from all of these people in this section here, the white, the black, the red, the yellow up here, these are all adults. So this is the the adult, the parent, the grandparent, and the elder. And all of when I folded this over, you could see, as we were growing up, we had all these good teachings. All of these people were there for us at specific times in our life. I'm going to paint the other side of this just so you can see the connection there. So once you get to this stage, you need to remember to be a good role model, because those teenagers are watching you. They want to know, like, because at this point you're not a parent yet. You know, you're an adult and you can do whatever you want, and that's so cool when you're a teenager. You know, it's like coming of age kind of thing, and you're legal everywhere, and that cool feeling like, yeah, what am I going to do first, right? That's kind of where they're at. So where do they look? They look to the adults, still young adults, but adult. And so these adults need to remember that these teenagers are watching everything they do. These teenagers are watching what kind of job do they have? What kind of car do they drive? You know, what kind of girlfriend do they get? You know, and it's because they want to be they want to hurry up and be adult. They want to hurry up and be at this point where they can kind of do whatever they want. So that this stage here, this adult stage is really important, that they be good role models for these teenagers. These ones here are out trying to figure out what they're doing, and hopefully they've had good teachings and good solid foundation, and so they'll, you know, figure out what they want to do in life. If they haven't, this is where they're going to leave home and they're going to end up lost. They leave home, they're going to be couch surfing, not really doing too much of anything, not pursuing education, maybe drinking, partying. So that's where the importance of having those good solid foundations is here when they leave home. But if they have had good solid foundations, they leave home, they figure out what they want to do, now they're adults. And so they know that these teenagers are watching them. They should be good role models. And take those teenagers under their wing and say, you know, come on. You know, in this book, he talks about the older boys. That would be, well, back then they were a lot younger, but when they were called men, they were a lot younger than they would be today. Today it would be here. So these ones here, what he talks about is they wouldn't, when they went out scouting or they went out to go find some buffalo, or they went to go on a hunt, these boys wanted to follow them. These boys were like, you know, I want to go too, let's go. And they would gather together, and these ones here, and they would follow these ones everywhere they went. And he said, these older ones didn't chase them away. They didn't chase them back to the camp, because they knew that they had to show them how to be adults, how to hunt, how to scout. And so they wouldn't chase them away. They would let them tag along. It's like being told to, you know, drag your little sister around with you, or, you know, your little brother around with you, and you're like, oh, do I have to? You know, they didn't do that. They said, yeah, come along. It wasn't at no cost though. These younger boys had to carry all these older boys' equipment and you know, stuff like that they were taking with them, their food packs and the tools that they were taking with them. So these younger boys were happy to carry those things for those older boys, because they were allowed to go along. So these ones here, and that's something that he talks about in that book. So these ones here, these adults, they have a responsibility to those teenagers. as you see when it folds down. The parents, like I talked about in depth, because it's important. That's very important, and I can't stress it enough how important it is that we're there for these children. And it's really difficult today when you know, other family members are raising our kids. And one day, you know, we pray that one day that won't be like that anymore. That will overcome the addictions and the darkness and all of that came with, you know, after residential school and 60 scoop and all that stuff. A lot of our kids are in care. Lots, too many. One is too many. And I could see, you know, when I used to go to, I'm a health support worker as well, so I used to work with the residential school survivors when they were going through their hearing processes. And some of their hearings would be at hotels downtown. They would go into boardrooms there. And I'd be sitting, you know, in the lobby waiting for the hearing to start. And I could see all these kids running around. And I didn't realize that they were all kids in care. And they had one person, you know, watching 15 kids or more. And they're just running around and doing whatever. And, you know, the front desk people are yelling at them to, you know, stop, go back to your room, like all this stuff. And they're swearing and standing outside smoking. And I thought, you know, why are these kids running around here like this? Where's their parents? And then I realized, oh my goodness, these are kids in care. Because I didn't know that they put them up in hotels. At that point, I didn't know that. I didn't know that until after. But yeah, there was, you know, all these kids in care, and they just run around, do whatever they want. Those, you know, some of those people that are sitting there supposed to be watching them are not Indigenous people, and it's almost like it's just a job, you know, to sit there and babysit. So them too, they're on their phones, not really paying attention. So a lot of our kids are suffering because they don't have this. They never had this. And that's really sad to me. It makes me sad. Because I can't imagine not having my kids with me. My kids go with me everywhere except here. I'm at the office. So they don't come to work with me. Well, sometimes they do. But if I'm going somewhere, I take my kids. I've always done that. I drag them around all over the place. And that was one thing that when I was a young mother, that was one of the first things I learned about being a mother was if I can't take my kids with me there where I'm going, then I shouldn't be there myself. That was one of the first things I learned as a young mother, that if I can't take them, then maybe I shouldn't be there too. So I can't imagine not having my kids and what, you know, the mothers, the parents, the fathers, the grandparents, what they're going through because those little kids are in care rather than in this family unit. So we pray for them. But one thing that I talk about a lot and I keep stressing is how important that is. So the next stage around is this red stage, and this is grandparents. And so, you know, grandparents have a lot of good stories. They have a lot of life experience, good or bad. um, I think of some of the stories that my grandparents used to tell. Of course, when they told stories, they were drinking. And so I was always afraid. I was always scared when they were drinking. When my mom would come home from work and she'd have a 2 for Labatt Blue. And then as soon as I seen that case of beer, I would be so scared because I knew that they were going to change. I knew that they were going to be different people. But, what could I do? I'm just a little girl. But at the same time, once they got to drinking, man, did they have good stories to tell. And I always wondered, how come they have to drink that blue bottle before they tell these stories? How come they can't just tell these stories any other time? But it was they did have good stories. But the grandparents, they're at that age where the kids have left, they're gone, they're out doing their own thing. Some of them are now adults and have their own kids and they have their own families, and it can be very lonely. Um, Especially if you don't see them, or maybe they live in another city or another part of the country. Um, they go away to work somewhere for a job. They'll pick up and move and take their kids, and it can be a very lonely time for grandparents. And so when they see these grandkids, though, when they're able to see them, even on a voice, just even like this, it makes them so happy. So there's a connection there. And so these stories that they tell these kids, are life lessons. And so they're going to take those into those teenage years, into those child years and those teenage years, and they're going to remember those stories. And so if these grandparents don't have that connection to be able to tell those stories, then these kids won't have that knowledge. So it's important that these grandparents be there at this stage. This is when they're old enough to sit and listen, but still young enough where it gets grandparents up and active and running around. So there's that connection. This last stage here is what I guess we call elder. So the very elderly. This is where they have that connection to the babies. These are the ones we call on a lot to name our babies because they have that connection. They have that connection with these babies because they're so close to Creator. They're so close to going home. And these ones have just come from there. So there's a really strong connection that they have. And so we call on these ones a lot to name our babies. And like I said, that Mama Coco who doesn't talk or doesn't, she's kind of already in mind. She's in spirit world. In body, she's still here. I heard an elderly man talk about his experience with Alzheimer's. And what he said was, when he's not here, he's already gone. He's in spirit world. He's visiting relatives. So when you walk in and he doesn't know who you are, it's because he's already there. He's already traveled, but his body remains here. And that's how he explained. And then every once in a while, he'll be present here and he'll remember people. And it's only for a short time because all of a sudden he's back over there visiting again. So he said it's almost like we live, when we have Alzheimer's, we're living half in this world and half in spirit world. I thought that was so amazing that he was able to share that. He said because sometimes when he's here on this world, he doesn't remember visiting over there. He doesn't remember that. But sometimes he does. Sometimes he remembers, oh, I just came from over there. Now I'm back here. So his mind is he's kind of those connections, those little lightning bolts that are going around in our brain are kind of in two places at once. There's a thin veil between us and our ancestors, and they're standing right in between that veil. Is right down the center of them, and they're half in, half out. I thought that was so interesting. And I'd never thought of it like that before. But it was his experience, his own experience with living with Alzheimer's. And so I guess, when we have elderly relatives, we got to kind of remember that it can be frustrating that, we walk in, they don't know who we are. But it's because they're visiting somewhere else. Just be patient, be patient with them until they come back here, and then they'll know who we are again. So the last thing that happens is we go home, back to spirit world. So this is and that's the way she told me when I was, I think I was about 6.5, 7 years old when she told me this story. It wasn't quite as long. It's just short, just kind of pointing out what each ring represents, each of these rings around represents. But as I started to, really think about this, and I started using this in different places, and I've delivered this presentation many times now, and I still think of new things that I can add to this that have to do with today, something that we can use today. These separate areas here, this could be a community. This is the community, and these are the community members. So the community, the chief, for example, the chief of a community, and these are the chief. This is the chief's family, and this is their extended relatives, and these are the community members, and it goes on like that. This is the community members' extended family, and then they go off, they break off into sections, and then these would be like we say the Tioshpai, the smaller groups of people who live together but in the same sort of community. There's so many teachings that can go with this blanket. It's just amazing. It's endless. It really is endless how many different teachings you can make just out of this. And if you change the colors, it could mean something totally different. So for me, the way I painted this, for the Dakota creation story, Ian used its blood. I don't want to say his. We always do that. We revert to his, I guess, because of colonization. We don't know if Ian was male or female. Maybe Ian was neither. Maybe Ian was both. We don't know. But what we do know is that Ian was energy, and Ian had blue blood. And so that's why the center and these end diamonds are painted blue, because they represent eon. The yellow, the baby, I painted yellow for the direction of the sun. The sun rises from the east, and that eastern direction is yellow. And then it goes on, so that our southern direction as we're going is red. The western direction is black. Some people use black, some people use dark blue. That white direction is the north. The green represents Mother Earth, or Maka. And so you see how those connections, the baby is yellow, the first, the sunrise, beginning of life, and then goes the toddler is red, and that's the next part of life, and then the child is black, and that's in the other doorway, and then they get all the way up to the elder that goes back. And sometimes what happens with our elderly, as they get older, they kind of revert back to sometimes being childlike. That's part of this stages of life. Sometimes that happens. And that's when, a lot of times we get frustrated and we say, I can't do this. I can't take care of her anymore. Geez, it's like having another baby. I can't do this. And we end up putting them in a home because we just can't. We don't understand it. And it's frustrating and it's hard. But that's what happens is they kind of, as they're going back to Creator, the grandparents, they get all playful and giddy when the grandchildren come, brings that youngness back to them. Those elders, they turn back into that little baby, and then they go. I've been with many people now who have passed on as they were passing. I guess there's a name for that now. It's called a death doula. I didn't know there was a name for that, but I am asked to be present when people are passing, because I know the ceremonies that go with that, and I know how to cleanse them once they're gone, and I dress them. Hardest one, and it's hard. It is really hard. Hardest one, my adopted sister lost her granddaughter, and I dressed her. That was the hardest one because she was just a baby. But eventually, we go through this life and we go back. And, one of our teachings is don't be afraid. That's one of the things that Eon taught the humans was don't be afraid. That's just part of this life. Once you leave here, all those people that went ahead of you, that you remember, you went to their funeral, you cried, you mourned, you missed them, you're going to see them again on that other side. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of death. And so that really hit home for me when I had to have surgery. And they told us, before I went into surgery that, you might not come out of this surgery, because they had to remove my lung, fix it, and then put it back in. And they said, your chances are, 50-50. And so at first I got scared. I thought, oh no, called on all these people, pray for me. But then, when I went in, I walked into that surgery room and I seen that bed there and I seen all of their stuff all ready to go. And I remembered that teaching that Eon gave to the humans. Don't be scared. if you should happen to go, you're going back to all those people that left you before. You're going to see them again. And so I went into that room, and they were like, "Oh, you're so calm. How come?" You know, everybody that comes in here, they're crying or they're scared. And I'm like, "No, I'm okay. Let's just do this. Let's do this." And I laid down, and yeah. And that's something that we have to teach our kids too. You know, don't be afraid of that, because these people that they're learning from are gonna leave while they're still young. And if they don't understand that process, it's gonna really hurt them. So we have to be open and honest about this too, that part. But I have some more things that I want to talk about this. Another part of it that has to do with that hoka ceremony, about the making of relatives. And so we're going to take a break, and after that we'll come back, and I'll talk about that ceremony and how important that is for us today. So we'll take what are we, 10 minutes or? Yeah, okay. So we'll be back in about 10 minutes.
Oh, I don't think your computer's on mute. It's not muted.
Okay. Oh, hang on. I'm gonna close the door. Okay, I'm back. I was just looking at the questions. There was a question about the number of diamonds, and if that has significance. I don't know. I never thought about that before. Part of this design is, so if this is us, if this represents me, for example, and you fold it over, it's exactly the same on both sides. So this would be, you know, a male side and a female side, because we get teachings from both sides. We get our, as a woman, we get our teachings about being a woman and what that means. And, you know, when we used to live, you know, in our communities and teepees, we had different protocols and manners that we had to follow. For example, I wouldn't be allowed to speak directly to my brother, and he wouldn't be able to speak directly to me. Different things like that. But we did receive teachings so that we would understand that other side, especially when we came to this point where we're at that stage in life where we're starting to be interested in a partner. That's when we received a lot of those teachings. We would get them growing up, but we really got a lot of teachings about what that means to be in a relationship. And we would learn about that man's role. As women, we would learn about that man's role. As men, they would learn that woman's role. They would learn about moon time. They would learn, you know, all of those things that we would learn, they would also learn, because there had to be an understanding. There had to be, we can't just go off into the Moon Lodge and they're like, well, where did they go? You know, they had to know what was happening and why. And because of that, there was no secrets in our life. And because they, you know, we shared each other's knowledge, there was an understanding there. You know, we didn't really have to ask too many questions. We just knew what was going on. The number, and I can't seem to find the question. Okay.
So the question was, you talked about the number of stars being 8, but as it goes out, it goes to 16 and then 24, 32, 40. Is there a specific meaning to that as well?
Maybe there probably is. I don't remember. You know, sometimes I get to talking and I don't really remember what I say. Oh, here, I found it. About the number of stars, 8, but as it goes out, it goes to 16 and then 24 and 32 and 40. That's a good question. There probably is, because like I said, there's so many different things that you can get out of just this one pattern. There's got to be a significance. That's a good question though, and I think I'm gonna take that and try and figure that out. And see, because there has to be, because the way you word that, yeah, it seems that there's a pattern there, and so there has to be a meaning to that. But also, you know, I was told, I was giving a presentation one time in Saskatchewan, and I seemed to be going on and on, and then somebody asked me a question. They put up their hand and they asked a question, and I was kind of like, what? What? What did that have to do with anything that I didn't say that, but I was thinking, what does that have to do with what I just said? And they said, well, you said this. And I was like, did I really? Did I say that? And everybody's like, yeah, that's what you just said. And so I said, oh, you know, I'll have to think about that. I'm sorry. I'll get back to you later. And then I had an elderly lady come up to me afterwards, and she put her arm around me. She said, it's okay. She said, you know, sometimes when we're in that moment, we get into this this space when things are flowing and our ideas are flowing, and then that's, you know, spirit will come in and talk through you and start giving teachings, and then later on you're like, did I really say that? So she said, it's okay, it's okay, you were probably giving teachings for someone else. A spirit helper came in and started talking. But that's a really good question. I'm going to take that and I'm going to figure it out, because there has to be some kind of, we as Indigenous people rely a lot on numbers. There are some very important numbers to us when we run our Inipi lodges, we call them sweat lodges today. When we run our Inipi lodges, we use a certain amount of stones, a certain amount of tokashilas. And that depends on what it's for, and you know, who our helpers are, and you know, all these things come into play. So yeah, there's got to be a reason for the numbers. Did you happen to notice any other questions, Amanda?
There's a few more. Sorry, I'm trying to simultaneously speak into Zoom and across the room, but somebody asked, other star blankets have a different color arrangement. Does that mean that they have different stories, or does your stages of life apply to those as well?
Okay, so today I'm going to turn on my slide actually, because that brings me to, oh, I gotta get used to doing this. It's easy when I'm doing this in front of a whole crowd of people, But when I have to share my screen and everything, it becomes a little harder. Okay. Share. Yeah, got it? Okay. It's kind of complicated. So these are the stages and how they go together. Just like as a visual. The colors on this star blanket are not the same as the ones I have here, but they are opposite to each other. This is the connections that they have. So baby to elder, babies and elders find great comfort in each other because they're closest to Creator in the stages of life. Toddler and grandparent. Toddlers are gifted with the ability to bring new energy to grandparents whose hands have become still. Child to parent. A child needs their parents for safety, nurturing, and love, and the parents need their children to keep them going on a good path. The teens and the adults. Teens need adults to show them how to become responsible adults, and adults have a responsibility to be positive role models for the teens. And that young adult that goes all the way around. The young adult can use what they learned from elders, grandparents, adults, and parents. This is the stage when the young adults have the courage to go out and find their purpose in life, to let go of the apron string. So that's just how they go together. And of course, the center star matches with the outer diamonds, and that represents life starts and ends with Creator. So today, we make star blankets for many, many reasons. I think there's a lot of different patterns. As you can see here, and this is just a few pictures of some star blankets. I think hang on. I have to take a Halls, I'm sorry. I got a dry spot. That's what happens when you talk too much. It's time to stop when you start coughing. Today we make star blankets for a number of different reasons in a multitude of different colors. Star blankets can be your favorite colors. They can have specific meaning, like this. This to me has specific meaning, just because of the teachings that I've received, our creation story, Eon's blood being blue, the different directions, east, south, west, north. So for me, these colors have meaning. And so your star blanket could be anything. It could just be your favorite colors. Maybe you have a star blanket that has the colors of when you received your name. You received some colors that went with that name. You might have a star blanket that has those colors on it. Maybe for like that on the top picture there's a little boy there, and he's just a cute little baby, and somebody has honored him with a star blanket, and they made that blanket blue. Maybe they made it blue because he's a boy and we like to associate boys in blue. Or maybe it's blue and it has those bear paws on it because maybe his name has something to do with a blue bear, or something like that. So it's very specific to each person. And so the colors that are chosen usually have a meaning. But like I said, it's very specific to that individual person or the person who you're giving it to, why you make it in those certain colors. Like the ones that have the spiral, but the one that my grandmother was making, it had these same colors, and each color represented a different animal nation. and they were racing. And so they were going around and around. And those colors just kind of followed behind each other like that, around and around. This one here, the one she was making, these colors in the center, I don't remember what color they were, but they were the same color all the way down on one side. And then this one was a different color, and this one was a different color, because she was making it to represent nations of people around the world who were coming from darkness, coming from their communities of darkness, where they've forgotten their teachings, they've forgotten their ways, maybe their languages, they're in addictions kind of thing, and they've been living this way, and they come out, they hear that beautiful drum and that singing, and it calls them out, and they come and they see, they follow this path, and it leads them to Sundance. For us, it led us to Sundance. For these other nations of people, it would be whatever their ceremonies are. So for these people over here, it might have been maybe they didn't hear drums, but maybe they heard like bagpipes or something like that. Maybe they heard like an African hang drum is what they were hearing, because that's where they were, that's the area that they were coming from. So she made all of these, and these lines here were different colors, but the rest of them were kind of the same colors. So I guess it just sort of depends on what it's for. We give star blankets nowadays to honor people like we did before, so that those buffalo robes, we would give those to honor somebody. And my grandmother, being a star blanket maker, she was really sort of strict about star blankets. Like I said, she would make one and then it was gone. And I kind of always wondered, well, where'd it go? How come you're not using it? Why is it not on your bed? Right? And so I learned later on that some people, especially the star blanket makers, the ones who come from long line of star blanket makers, and the ones who painted the robes, that's where they came from, is the ones who painted the robes were the ones to figure out how to make that star pattern the same as it looked on the robes. Were the ones who figured out how to make this pattern of stars, who became our star blanket makers, who passed that on to us. And so those people, and there were men and women who made star blankets, they really were very strict about the rules, some of the rules about star blanket making, and my grandma was one of them. So I removed a slide here, and I don't know why I removed it. Oh, it was between this one and the other one. So I'm just gonna go through this list quickly, some of the things that my grandmother told me about star blankets. That I'm not to make myself a star quilt or ask anyone to make me a star quilt, especially one with my spirit colors on it. The reason why we don't make or ask for one is because the quilts are supposed to represent a personal accomplishment or to honor us in some way. And we make a star quilt with a person's spirit colors on it to honor that person, either when they receive that spirit name, because some of us don't end up getting our spirit name until we're a lot older. Some of us, as soon as they're born, they have that spirit name. But they'll receive a blanket with the colors that they receive that comes with their spirit name. But she always said, don't ask for a blanket, because somebody's supposed to be honoring you. That's the reason they had those buffalo robes, and they painted all those designs on those buffalo robes, because they were honoring you for something that you did, an accomplishment, an achievement, for being brave, for for something great that you did in your life. So to ask for one is kind of being, how did she say? I don't remember. She used a term, but it's kind of like gloating or saying, "Look what I've done." It's kind of like when you ask for one, it's like saying that, "Look what I've done." But that's her. She was very strict. If I receive a quilt, a star quilt, from a giveaway or for something that I have done or accomplished, I can use that quilt, but there are rules as to what I can and can't do with that quilt. So again, she was very strict. I'm not to re-gift my quilt because someone made that to honor me. And if I give it or sell it away, it'd be very disrespectful. So that buffalo robe, that's what that represents. That's when somebody gives you a star quilt, that's what that represents, is that buffalo robe, that painted robe, and they're honoring you. And so if you're like, oh, that's nice, and you fold it up and the next giveaway you give it away, like it's very disrespectful. I'm not to put or lay my star quilt on the ground. By laying it on the ground, I'm saying that I'm not worthy of the honor of having it. So I remember, I don't know if it was in this book. He's written a few books. I don't remember if it was in this one or a different one, but I remember him talking about a buffalo robe, a painted robe. And somebody, one of the men in the community was boasting about something that they had done, telling stories that they had been like really brave or something like that. And so the community thought, oh, he should be honored for that. He should be honored. So they made him a buffalo robe. They painted it and sort of put that story on there with those diamond shapes. That those diamond shapes represented all the feathers that he counted in coup, and the community that was behind him, his family members. That's what that represented. And they presented that with him, and he felt so bad because he wasn't expecting them to do that, but he felt so ashamed because he lied. He didn't actually do those things that he said. He just made it a bigger story, a better story, but it made him sound like the hero, right? So he felt so bad that he took that blanket and he laid it out on the ground in the center of the community with that painted side down, and he said, I'm sorry, I'm not worthy of this, I lied. And he left and he never came back to the community. So the same thing is saying about your star blanket that somebody's honoring you with. Today we go to powwow, we lay our blankets out, I put them on the ground and sit down on them. My grandma said, no, use a different blanket, not that one. Use a different one. Because you're saying you're not worthy of that honor of having it. And then one of the ones that she was really, this is the most strict I've ever seen her, was if we're at a Sundance, because the Sundance is for Dakota people anyway, it's our highest ceremony. It's right at the top. It's the most, sacred, besides that journey home when we pass. That Sundance is way up there. And she said, don't ever flick a blanket at a Sundance. And if you get something on you, maybe you're sitting wrapped in your blanket and you're eating and you get crumbs on it, you stand up and to flick the crumbs off. Just don't ever do that. Don't you ever flick your star blanket in the air at a Sundance. And so being a little girl, that's kind of scared me. But then she never told me why, but I learned why later on. And why that is because, and I learned it at a Sundance, was because when you you're taking all those honors and you're flicking them in the air like that. It's like you're provoking the thunder beings, the thunder spirits, this thunderstorm. There'll be a big storm if you do that. It's like you're saying, look what I've done. I challenge you. This is what I've accomplished in my life. These are all the, how many times I've counted coup. These are all the feathers of the enemies I've taken. These are all the horses I've stolen. These are all the things, that I've been honored with. I challenge you. So she said, don't ever flick your blanket in the air, and especially at a Sundance. Anytime, but especially, she said, because those spirits are all around when you're at a Sundance. The spirits are all around, and if you flick that blanket, they're going to take that as a challenge, and a big storm will come. So I never ever have flicked my blanket ever. I'm too scared. But also at my other grandmother, her sister added on to that and said, but two, also you shouldn't flick your blanket outside at night, because then you'll call down those dancing spirits. You'll call them down, and they'll come down and they'll take you. They'll take you away. The Northern Lights, the dancing spirits. My grandmother's sister was afraid of those ones. She was afraid of those dancing spirits, and she said, no, don't ever wave your blanket around outside either at night, because they'll come down and they'll take you, and all that will be left will be your blanket. So that's another thing. I just don't flick it all together, because I don't want to upset any kind of spirits. Too scared. But so to as far as the colors, it's really a very personal thing. Oh, there's that one. It's a little bit different. Third one down on the right hand side. That's that swirl pattern that my grandmother was making. The race. That's how it looks. But the outsides of it are different. The outsides of it are more like this pattern. Yeah, but that's the third one down on the right hand side. That's the swirl pattern. That was the race. All those, each one represented an animal nation. They all started in the same spot, but as they went, they couldn't go any farther, and then they would stop and lose the race, and then the next one would go. Yeah, I didn't even notice that was on there. So yeah, as far as the colors go, it's very personal, depending on what you're using it for. But I wanted to quickly, before it's getting 3 o'clock, I said, what did I say? I'm probably not going to take up the whole hour, I said. But once I forget, though, once I get talking, I just keep going and going. My husband and I have a dream to do family therapy sessions, because a lot of our families are dysfunctional. A lot of our families are so separated, and in some live here, some live there, some don't talk to each other. So we want to do family therapy, and it always starts with, I do therapy sessions already, single, one-on-one, or couples sessions, but I think it's very important to have family therapy, because it starts with one person. One person will come and say, oh, my family, they're so dysfunctional, I wish we could just all get along. Starts with one person, or maybe two people that feel the same. And so we want to have family therapy sessions based around this simple pattern, this simple design, this simple teaching. And I say simple because it's very simple. It's just hard to put it into practice, within our own families. And that's what I wanted to touch on before we end. So we want to base our whole family therapy off of this. So it starts with that one person that comes and says, can you help us? And then gradually, I guess it would kind of maybe look like that swirl pattern, because gradually we'll start with this one person or one or two people, and we'll slowly add more people as we go through. And eventually we'll have those people that came forward, their close family, their extended family, maybe community. We'll have community involvement. Our community, our leaders should be helping us. And I know they're overrun and they're busy and they have a lot on their plate. But sometimes, when I went to a family session that had to do with getting kids back from care, and the community leaders were supposed to come and be part of this process of support, because that's what this is support, right? This is all just support. Each diamond shape is supporting the next, and side by side we're holding hands. That's what this is. We're connected. We're holding hands side by side. And so those leaders were supposed to come and they didn't come. And that person who we were trying to help get her kids back felt so unworthy, or well, if my leaders can't even be here for me, then what's the point? So we want to really get leadership involved in whatever the problem is, because there's some kind of something that went on, something that happened, and if we can get community to help, that's what we want to do. If community leaders have nothing to do with it, then they don't have to involve them. This is only who needs to be involved, and we bring all these people together, and eventually at the end of this, we're going to have a big celebration, no matter how long this takes. You go to therapy sessions today and they say, okay, we'll give you 8 sessions. And then after that, either it's not paid for anymore, or, we have to wrap this up in 8 sessions, is what the therapist will say. And we're not going to do that. That's not our plan. This takes how long it takes. But at the end of it, we want to have a big ceremony and have all these people, every one of these people who are involved in this, we want to have them come together and see the connection that they have with each other and see that they are important to each other. So, some people might be saying, well, that's all great. It looks nice, it's pretty. But my family doesn't look like that. So there's me, and then my parents. Well, my mom is an alcoholic, and my dad is not there. My sisters are not there for me. I feel like I'm all alone. Like I don't really have these people surrounding me like that. That looks great how you have it, but I don't have that kind of support. That's more like how my support looks without these here. We're talking about this person. Their main supports, their main family members who are around, might not be there for whatever reason. I don't have that. It sounds all well and good, but to me it seems hopeless. I don't have that. I have maybe a little bit here and a little bit there. But even them, they're not there, when I call them or if I need them. They say they're going to be there, but they're not really. They have their own problems. They have their own issues. They're dealing with addictions. they have, their own kids in care that they're worrying about. I don't have that support. It's just not there for me. What do I do? How does this work for me then? This is when you hear those drums and you go back to your ceremonies, you go back to that way of life. There are so many people here. So many people who are on that same journey, on that same, red road or whatever you want to call it, the good life, living that good way, going to ceremony, raising their children, having that community connection. These people, those are your family members. And yes, they're family. You got to love them, they're family, but they might not be there for you, and that's okay. Because once you follow this path and you go back to your ceremonies and you go back to where those traditional people are, they might not be your family, they might not be blood relatives. But we have that honka ceremony that we do, the making of relatives. That's one of the laws, I guess they call them, of Dakota people, Lakota people, is the making of relatives. It's one of our ceremonies. And so that's what I did with my good friend, Angela. I made her a star blanket. I made her a star blanket in her colors that she got with her name, because those colors represent her. And so I had all her colors, and I made that blanket, and I invited her to come to our family's Sundance, my husband's family Sundance. We both come from Sundance family, but his family Sundance. I said, come and check it out, come and spend the night, and because she was talking about Sundance and thinking about it. And I said, well, come and see what it's about, So she came out, and I didn't tell her that I was going to do this. And so I approached the Sundance chief, and I said, I want to do this honka ceremony. I want to adopt my good friend to be my sister. And he said, yeah, whenever you're ready, whenever you want to do, let's do this. So we were sitting, I said, let's go see the buffalo dancers are getting ready. Let's go and see them. Let's go and, watch that ceremony. And so we went into the big, they have a big long teepee that they all get ready in there. And so we were just kind of sitting there, and I had that blanket with me, and she was like, oh, this is so neat. I love these songs, and the smell of the medicine they were using as they were getting dressed and they were burning. And then so that's Sundance leader there, he looks at me, and I went like this, like, I'm ready. And he said, okay. And then he went up kind of to the front there. He got the attention of all the buffalo dancers that were in there. And I was standing up already. I had that blanket out of the bag. And my friend Angela's just sitting in the chair, just looking around and go, oh, what's going on? What's happening now? And he says, I have one of my relatives here wants to do a ceremony, an adoption ceremony. And she kind of sat up, and she was like, ooh, And then so he went like this. He's kind of, come on up. So I touched her shoulder, and she looked at me, and then I said, let's go. And she was like, oh, me? Oh, so she gets up and she's like, what do I do? What do I do? And I said, just stand there. So he said, so I spoke, and he spoke, and I wrapped her in that blanket, and told her, I said, here in front of Creator, in front of these buffalo dancers and the spirits that they bring with them, and in front of Creator and this Sundance leader, I'm adopting you as my sister. And so we have that ability to do that. These people might not be ready. They might not ever be ready. And we can't force that on them, It would be nice if they, sort of followed suit sometimes and, oh, I'm going to ceremony. Are you coming along? We can't drag them. We can't force them. They have to make that choice on their own. And so they might not be at the same place where you're at spiritually, or trying to make that connection, or trying to live this good life and wanting support, because that's what this is about, is support. And they might not be there. They might not be ready for that. But that's okay, because you always have this. You can always, once you get to ceremony, once you start going, you're going to meet people. You're going to meet people, older people. You meet older people, and then and you'll get to know them, and you'll start talking and sharing stories, and then you're going to want to call that person your auntie or your grandfather or your grandmother. You're going to have this relationship, and it's going to feel like their family, because they are. We are all Mitakuye, Oyasin, for us, Dakota and Lakota. We're all related. Everything's not that we're all related, everything is connected. Everything is connected. And so you can make those relatives. These will always be your relatives. These will always be your blood relatives. But sometimes we can't count on them to be there for us, to be that support for us. And that's okay. I had a relative one time. She, would always say, "Oh, I don't have anybody. I'm alone. I have no one," because she felt this way, that everyone had sort of left her and abandoned her. And one of the teachings that we get from the creation story is that even if you're out on the prairie, standing in a big field, and there's no one around for miles, you are still not alone, because we're connected to everything. Creator, yeah, gave its blood to make everything that's created. The grass, the trees, the plants, the animals, everything. And so we all carry this blood. And so we're never alone. So even if you think you're alone, you're not. And it's important, especially when yesterday was Bell Mental Health Day, and there's a lot of mental health issues that we face today, and a lot of it has to do with people don't feel like they have proper supports, and so they feel like they have to do everything on their own, by themselves. But you always have relatives, whether it be just go out on the land, take off your shoes, take off your socks, connect with the earth. And it's important that you take your socks and your shoes off, because just to really feel that connection. Just go and stand out there on the land, and you'll feel that connection, and you'll say, I'm not alone. I have relatives, and I have support. You'll always have support if you make relatives. If you go through, do that ceremony. It doesn't have to be a formal ceremony. You can just say, hey, I think of you as my brother. And they'll probably say, yeah, I think of you as my brother too. And then, you'll just start introducing yourself as, this is my brother. This is my sister. It doesn't have to be formal. But we do have that ceremony that we do. So even though this might be how your life looks, that's okay. Because at some point, these people might start to come around and to want to heal. Some people never get to that point. We can't wait for them. If you think that this is your only option for support, you're never going to get where you want to be, because we can't wait for those people to come around. Healing starts here, and we only have control over this. You don't have any control over anybody else. So we do what we have to do. You know, some of these people may have way up into these people here, the elders, the very elderly, the grandparents, the parents, these people might be all dysfunctional. And so because they're dysfunctional, these young ones are dysfunctional. Because these young ones are dysfunctional, these children aren't care. You know, and this is because of residential school. Everything, all the problems we have as Indigenous people all lead back to residential school, everything. If you sit down with a family and you talk about their issues and what's going on, and really dig down deep, well, where did that come from? How did that start? When did you start feeling that way? When did that start happening? It all goes back and leads to residential school every time. So we have to, for me, I'm here. So I'm sort of in between these two stages here because I still have young children, but I'm also getting on. So I'm kind of here. I can make that choice to stop what residential school did. I can make that choice. I made that choice when I finally grew up, when I had a child of my own, when I was real young. I had nobody to help me. My mom was not there. My aunties all lived in the West. I lived in the East at that time. I felt like I really had to grow up quickly. And I decided at that point, I'm not going to let my kids see me the way I saw my mom. I'm not going to let them see me drunk. I'm not going to let them see me high. I'm not going to let them see me beat up. I made that decision, and they never, my oldest two, my youngest three, none of them have ever seen me in any of those states. And anybody that you know, that we have friends or family who are still, you know, in those addictions and those kinds of things, we tell them, you stay away because we don't want our kids around that. And so they've never seen me in that state, and I'm very proud of that. But at the same time, it's because I made that conscious decision to stop what residential school has done to our family. I'm not going to pass that on to my kids. And so my support looked a lot like this, because I don't know who my father is. I still don't know. Probably will never know until I pass on and I meet him. My aunties were living in the West. I was by myself. My mom had passed away. So this kind of looked like my support system. But I started going to ceremony, and I lived because of the 60 scoop, I lived in Southern Ontario. I grew up in London because my mom had her first son taken in the 60 scoop. She then was flagged. Everybody knows what that means, I think, at the hospital. She didn't know about these flags. She got pregnant again. As soon as she had that baby, they took the baby. She never seen her, never got to see her. So when she got pregnant with me, someone told her to run. Someone told her to get out of the province. Your flag won't follow you. They won't be able to take that baby in another province because they won't know that there's flags. So she did. She took off to Ontario. There was work there. There was jobs there. So that's where she went. And so I was born in Southern Ontario. But after she passed and everybody all lived over here in the West, I felt like I really didn't have anybody, any connections. I went to ceremony. I'm Dakota person, Dakota on my grandfather's side, Lakota on my grandmother's side. These are, you know, different ceremonies from the Six Nations and the Ojibways and I don't even remember the Chippewas and that are over there. The Haudenosaunee, Haudenosaunee. Sorry, I can't say that. Those people from the Six Nations and that they had, you know, ceremonies of their own over there. But I went to them. I had friends who went to them, and so I said, "Can I come?" And those people became my family. I have a good friend who lives in the Windsor area. She was the one that introduced me to these ceremonies. And, you know, I still call her Auntie Donna. I still call her Aunt Donna. Even after all these years, I've adopted them, you know, as family. So it's up to you whether you want to continue to feel alone in this world, or if you want to bring in people who are on a good journey, who are on that, and bring them closer to you and make them your family. They don't have to be blood relatives, because sometimes our blood relatives, we can't count on them, and that's okay. That's their journey. But we can make the decision to make our own relatives. And then this comes into play. And then these connections are made. So that's my life teachings. Star blanket, using the star blanket to show those connections and how they're connected and what each stage of life represents. And so I hope you enjoyed that. I basically was only telling the story that my grandmother told me. And I hope I did her story justice, and in the way I shared it. Oh, look, Hadino Shoni, Hadino Shoni. Oh, thank you. I always had a problem saying that. But yeah, so that's basically all I have now for today. I'm going to figure out those other two patterns, and once I figure them out, I'll share those as well. So until then, is there any other questions or?
I didn't notice any other questions.
I was kind of keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, I think everyone's just expressing their thank you. I just wanted to close with, well, first off, a big thank you, Kathy. I probably speak for most people here when I say that your teachings were very informative, and they like really spoke to me. And I know teachings have a way of delivering messages to everyone in a different way. So I really hope that there's some people watching that really felt maybe Creator was speaking to them today, because I certainly felt that. So thank you so much for coming. I know that we are expecting to see you again in the future for some other sessions. And then also I wanted to remind our watchers just that I had shared a link earlier with our survey, because the whole virtual session is fairly new to us as an organization. We are very open to hearing feedback from our participants, ways that we can improve, or advice, tips and tricks, that sort of thing. So it's also in the email where you received the Zoom link. The survey link is there as well. So if you have it'll only take like a minute or two. It's fairly short, but we would very much appreciate that. And then also we have some other sessions coming up. next week on February 4th, Thursday, yeah, we have Victor Tsazazi. He will be speaking about Dene history and storytelling. So that event is already up on our Facebook page. And recordings like this, like today's sessions is recorded, and those will be available on our website. I had shared that in the chat earlier as well, but if you would like the link, then feel free to email me. Our email is admin@anish.ca. I'll just put that in the chat quick. And you can, email with follow-up questions. I can forward those to Kathy if anybody had any comments or questions for her. But yeah, we're very excited to bring everybody these teachings in a virtual format. We have a lot more that we kind of have in the works. We're hoping to have the Cree creation story, red dress beading session, Inuit creation and traditional stories, lots of options. And also on our survey, there is an option for you to enter like any types of teachings or workshops that you are interested in, that you would like for us to deliver, via this way. So please do take a look at the survey. We very much appreciate it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll let everybody continue on with their Friday. Thank you all for joining. We very much appreciate it. And we'll see you in our next session. So, Masicho.